Everybody, welcome to a very special Roxboro House Roundtable sponsored by the Arlen Specter Center. This is a series we've been doing for a number of years, dealing with current events, events in the world, events locally, and events on campus. This is special today because we have the presidents of some very important groups, student groups on campus, and we have our new Chancellor, who will be introducing himself shortly, so we can all get to know him and he can get to know us. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Law and Society student and senior Leslie Durantes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this roundtable. So I'm the president of LASO, which is Latin American Student Organization. And today we have some other members and presidents of different identity groups on campus. So we have BSU President John, BSAC, which is Black Student Committee, and Black Women Association President Ashante. We have Asian Student Association President Lexi. We have the Secretary of QSU here, Queer Student Union. We have Muslim Student Association President Tabs here. And we have SASA South Asian Student Association President Arlen. So next, we're going to introduce the new Chancellor, Willie McKEther.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Evan, and for everybody for inviting me to today's event. I'm really excited and glad to be here. So I can tell you I'm now, I guess, wrapping up my 4th week of being the Chancellor here on the East Falls campus. And it's been a great 4 weeks. And I've had an opportunity to meet with some phenomenal students, as well as faculty and staff. And so just a little bit about me. So I come from the University of Toledo. There I served in various capacities over a 15-year period. I started my career there as a faculty member in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, which means I'm an anthropologist by training. I'm a business-trained cultural anthropologist, which means I have degrees both in business as well as anthropology, and use those skills to solve real-world issues. At Toledo, I taught for the first, I think, 9 years, various courses, and then transitioned into a leadership role. Now, real quickly, I transitioned into a leadership role, not because I wanted to, but because I felt the need to. I thought that students were not being retained and graduating at the rate that they should have, and began to ask many questions of the administration of why. And ultimately, the short story is, well, since you're talking so much, Willie, well, become the administrator. And I thought it was an opportunity for me to have a greater impact, a larger number of students if I became an administrator. So ultimately became the associate dean of one of the colleges. And then ultimately I was promoted to the vice president for diversity, equity, inclusion, and vice provost. And that's the role I served for about 5 years prior to coming here. And so in that role, it meant I was largely responsible for the campus climate, making sure that all faculty, staff, and students felt a sense of inclusion, and focus on issues of equity across campus as well, but also on student success. You know, my belief, and I'll stop, is that for every student that we recruit to an institution, we have an obligation to help ensure that that student is successful and that student graduates. And so I am what you might call a student-centered leader. I believe that students are our priority. That's the reason that we're here. And so what you see here at East Falls is that, you know, I'm engaged with students. And so largely my job here at East Falls really is to be an advocate, to be here on the East Falls campus, helping to ensure that, again, faculty, staff, and students, voices are heard, and the students in particular are graduating. And I do that through working with many wonderful colleagues, including Dr. Humphreys, who the Division of Student Life in general reports to me. And so I work very closely with Dr. Humphreys and his team, as well as with alumni, as well as gift giving, and we'll also have some involvement with the recruitment of students as well. So my job is big, and I think it's still evolving, recognizing that there's not been a person in this seat on a daily basis for 3 to 4 years now. Dr. Klasko, I know, is here. And so now my job really is just to sort of fill those big shoes, but to be here on a daily basis, being visible on campus, and serving the needs of students. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chancellor. Before Leslie gets into the people, I want to give a little background on how this happened. Leslie and the other presidents of the identity groups came together in a sort of UN type of arrangement where they expressed their opinions on how they're doing on campus, and more importantly, how to make their experience on campus even better, how we can also recruit more minority students and make them comfortable here. And I think we're going to hear from each of these presidents on their individual experiences and what positive suggestions they want to make on how to make this all better for everybody. Leslie?
So first we're going to move on to Lexi, and she's going to explain what the Student Identity Council is, and then to Tabs, who will explain the purpose of this roundtable.
Hi, I'm Alexis Doan, or also known as Lexi Doan. I am the president of the Asian Students Association. And to give you a little bit of a brief on who we are the Student Identity Council, which was started this year by the 7 presidents of the identity-based organizations: LASSO, BSU, BSAC, ASA, QSU, MSA, and SASA. The purpose of this council is to discuss issues that minority students are facing on campus and in the classroom. Our goals are to discuss those issues with the school, to offer suggestions on how to make the school a better place for all of us, which is why we have planned this roundtable for today.
The roundtable today is to cover 2 main parts: microaggressions and inclusivity on campus. Students from all the organizations mentioned previously by Lexi have discussed with us issues they have been experiencing with language that makes them feel uncomfortable in the classroom. Moreover, while the campus does a good job at being diverse, there are not many opportunities for inclusivity. Everything is more so generalized. This has led to students coming to us feeling like their cultures are not represented, or they are improperly represented.
So the first topic we're going to cover is microaggressions, and people on our board are going to talk about their experiences first, and then we're going to open it up to any of the students who are here to talk about it. So microaggressions are statements, actions, or incidences regarded as instances of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against a member of a marginalized group. This can include racial, ethnic, or gender and sexuality groups. So we're going to move on to the first person, Ashante.
Hi, so I am the president of the Black Student Activist Committee, and I also am the president of the Black Women's Association. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of times where I've been in a situation where a professor has said something to me that is considered a microaggression. So I walked into class and I changed my hairstyle. And when I walked in, she was like, "Oh, I see you have like a new hair. You have new hair today. Like, is that like a new do or something?" And she was referring, like when she was saying do, she was referring to my hair. And that's like an example of how if someone who is not of color, is not Black, and if you're just trying to say you like someone's hair, then you could just say you like their hair. You don't have to question it, and you don't have to it feels as though like my hair is being treated as like an object or something. Like it's not hair. It's like I don't really know how to explain it, but that's one of the ways that I've experienced microaggressions on this campus. I've also had a professor refer to me as "oh girl," or saying like "yo yo," or like speaking in a way that they feel like relates to me. And it's like that's not necessary. You can just speak the way that you speak. You don't have to try to throw slang, quote unquote, or call me girl to feel like that needs to happen for us to interact. Like, so those are like the only 2 times where I've experienced microaggressions on this campus.
Okay, we're gonna.
Just real quickly, so I don't want to respond to that necessarily, but thank you, Ashanti. But I just do want to acknowledge, I know that many of my colleagues are on, and I know that Lizette Martinez, who is the leader for diversity for the enterprise, and members of her team are on. So I say that only to say that we got a bunch of people, and it's our attempt really to listen to what you all are saying, so we can, go back and sort of digest it and think about what to do moving forward. So I want you to say that real quickly.
I'm sorry. Do you want me to say that again? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just acknowledging the presence of several of our leadership colleagues on the call who lead the diversity efforts for the university, just to say that they're here and that we're listening. So that was it. Yeah.
We're going to move on to the next person, Lexi.
I will not be sharing one of my experiences, but rather I will be speaking on behalf of a student in my club organization who reached out to me. She recently had a conversation with a professor in which he addressed her name by being very difficult, and he asked several questions about where she was from and where her family was from, and just in a very random matter. It was just in front of the class, and she felt uncomfortable that he was kind of just interrogating her about her ethnicity, about her heritage, without any permission, context. It was just very out of nowhere. And he also made other comments about her English speaking skills, despite not knowing where she is from or where she was born. And I know that's something that other students have most likely also gone through. And while thankfully I've never had that experience myself, that is something that I would like to address.
Thank you, Lexi. And we're going to move on to our QSU Secretary. The president couldn't be here today. He had an emergency, but she's here to talk about their experience.
Hi there. Sorry, I was muted. Are you all able to hear me? Awesome. So my name is MJ. I go by any pronouns, so whatever is fine. I'm here not to speak personally about QSU matters, but I am sharing people from.
I'm having a difficult time hearing the speaker.
I apologize. Do I just have to speak louder? I'm so sorry. Alrighty. So my name is MJ, and I'm speaking about microaggressions towards people in the LGBT community on campus. I do not personally have any instances of this, but my community has seen this. Students on campus have experienced professors not using correct pronouns or not asking for pronouns at all. And this leads to students feeling left out, especially if they use like they, them, or any not conventional pronouns, I guess. And then we also had professors not leading open conversations about asking for pronouns. So if a student feels comfortable sharing their pronouns with the class, the professor should still be open to accepting that. And we've also seen professors on campus asking inappropriate questions about hair color or clothing choice. It's inappropriate. So we wanted to address that. I'm also here as a student with disabilities on campus. I have reduced mobility, and I personally have had many problems with mobility on campus. There are several times that elevators aren't working, and when I bring it up, it seems like an inconvenience. There's also an entire building without an elevator in it. And sometimes it just feels like it's being ignored. That's all I had to share today.
Thank you, MJ. And we're going to move on to Tabs.
Yes. Hello, I'm Tabassum, president of the Muslim Student Association. So it was very challenging for us to think about different microaggressions from our end because it's been so normalized. We don't really we don't really notice it. But I think off the bat, a lot of us can agree on this assumption that most people think that Muslims are from the Middle East. You see a Muslim and you immediately think about the Middle East, whereas, I mean, like research has shown that Muslims are mostly concentrated in, you know, Southeastern Asian countries. But I mean, besides that, it's just, I've had experiences where I've had professors sort of like Ashante, where to connect with us, they've kind of started to randomly talk about Middle Eastern countries in different classes. But we can't really relate to that because we're not from the Middle East, or it's just this idea that religion, you know, is its own culture. And not, you know, besides that, we might have other identities as well, country-wise, but you can't really just pinpoint that this is like our country based on, you know, what the media portrays and things like that. So that's one. And then I think another microaggression that was brought up was that this sort of question, when you see someone covered up like me, there's this question, oh, aren't you hot under there? So again, like we're kind of used to these questions or these assumptions, but they are sort of, and we're glad to answer them or face them, but at the same time, it's just become so repetitive at this point. It's like, you know, can't we get the answer already? Like we're kind of used to it. We're not hot under here. We're not from the Middle East. Yeah.
Thank you, Tabs. And we're going to move on to Ashlyn.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn. I'm the president of the South Asian Student Association. I'm a third-year pre-med major, and I just wanted to talk about a microaggression that I experienced maybe my freshman year at Jefferson. At this time, it was November, and at that time, there was an event that Jefferson SASA was hosting. It was Garba. So if you don't know what Garba is, it is a festival that has religious backgrounds, but we kind of make it non-religious and more of a fun event for people to dance and dress up. So with this event, we also dress up in South Asian attire, and it's very bright and colorful and has a lot of flair to it. But with that flair, it also comes a lot of attention. And so when I was walking back to Ronson, my dorm, after the event, it was dark at night, maybe like 10, 11 p.m. And all I just hear is this comment like yelled at. It was, go back to your own country. And it was a very ignorant thing to hear, especially it's a freshman campus. Why would you say that? You're in college, not like in middle school or high school. So it was a very ignorant thing to hear. And I didn't really expect that to be heard at Jefferson, especially because I was born here, like this is my country. And just to even say that to someone, you don't understand where they come from. America is America. This is a land full of immigrants, and I just think it's something to be recognized.
Thank you, Ashlyn. I don't think John is on here yet, but last thing I'll share about my experience is sometimes being in college, people question whether you belong here or your intelligence, whether it makes sense why you're smart, if that makes sense. I've gotten questions like, oh, your English is so good, but I was born here, why wouldn't my English be good? Questions that shouldn't be asked to people of color, and they're never asked to other white students. So it's obviously have to do with my race and my ethnicity and not my actual intelligence. And I'm gonna open it up to any of the students who are here who want to talk about any experiences they've had on campus. And if you want to just like raise your hand or pop up on camera, we'll go to you and unmute you.
Leslie, let me just mention one thing. I think it's MJ who brought it up regarding pronouns. The hardest thing is, from a faculty point of view, is using them, because we've been taught for so long that them is plural. And when you use she or he, whatever it may be, there is no disrespect, at least in some people I know. I'm not speaking for other people. There's no disrespect. It just comes from years of training in grammar that you got ingrained into you for so many years that it's hard to get rid of that. So how would you suggest, for people who have that problem, how would you suggest they can get around it so they don't make the student feel uncomfortable?
I don't want to speak specifically for Queer Student Union. MJ, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah.
Yes, so one of the biggest ways that we've seen to combat this is just like you use them for people whose like gender you don't know already, like if you haven't met them yet, like exactly in that context. So you just have to think about it like that. We use them or they, them, those pronouns for people individually all the time. If you're speaking about a person like who's not in the room, like they're not here right now, we use it for non-plural instances constantly. You just have to make sure you're being like cognizant of that fact. I understand that this is like a newer concept, but it's part of people's identities and you can't really ignore it, even if it does take a little bit of work, but that is what I would recommend.
MJ, if you could do me a favor, you have so many important things to say. You're in an area of a lot. It sounds like it's a party that's over there. If you could just possibly move to a quieter area, because I know I want to hear what you have to say, if you don't mind. Good, thank you so much. Going back to Leslie.
Yeah, so just to reiterate a little bit of what I heard in case you didn't hear, is that words like they and them have been used for so long when you don't know, when you're talking about a person who maybe you don't know who they are and you don't know their pronouns, you already use they and them for those situations. So it's not really something that's completely new. And from what I've heard, the best way to figure it out is to just talk to people. Communicating with people, most likely they won't get offended by what you're asking, and they'll try to understand where you're coming from, since it is something new for a lot of people. And I think that's the best way to address it right now, communication.
Leslie, I just saw Johnny is on.
Oh, yes.
Hello. Thanks for that. Yeah, just added in. Sorry about being a little late. I'm John, BSU president representing here. Adding in to anything as we continue conversation.
So are there any other students who want to talk about their issues? If not, we can move on to John to discuss some ways to address these.
Hello, I have some things to say, if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I'm from MSA. I'm the event coordinator, not the president. She's already talked. But some things I noticed here are the fact that during Ramadan and stuff, people aren't really aware of what it is and what it's about. And then when it does come time to fast and things, we're always like scrambling around last second during class and everything, because like, you know, you haven't eaten for 8+ hours, things like that. And I think that there should be more information given out about specifically like Muslim celebrations and stuff.
I see there's a couple of hands. Michelle?
I think for me, like a big one that I've seen is more like you kind of feel like a second-class citizen in Jefferson in minority groups, just in general, just by the money thing for me is a big one, that, you know, money is getting received for other clubs and stuff, that it's for like cultural, that I feel like for that, for me, it makes us feel like second citizens. Also, I feel like just in general, like when we do events and stuff, for them to be a little bit more accepted and for like faculty to attend. You know, I've never seen a faculty attend, you know, minority group, like, you know, their events. But when it's something else, like when we have like something outside of Canberra, I see, like, you know, I see the dean, I see other people, I see professors attending that. And it kind of makes me kind of sad when I don't see professors or even faculty like show up to minority group events, just because I feel like if they show up, they can understand a little bit of our culture, and maybe they could understand where we're coming from, because these institutions weren't really made for us. If we go back to generations, it was made for white men, not for a lot of us that are here and talking about this. So I feel like if they could just make a little effort of attending and stuff and going to, you know, not just going to like, I don't know, the haunted house or something that the frats are throwing, or I don't know, like that's an example or something like that. Like, I feel like that would be something, so we don't feel like second citizens or second class citizens, you know? And I just that, like, just to support a little bit more of like faculty and stuff. So yeah.
See, Madia Trudeau has a hand up.
Yeah, so I think that I agree with like a lot of what's being said here. As a student of color, I just feel like just in the classroom, it can be very uncomfortable when professors just like, they don't realize that what they're saying is like extremely offensive. Like I have had classes where like a professor compared my hair to the texture of wool, and then we had an entire conversation about how I never straightened my hair and how that's really weird. And I was a freshman, so I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know where to go in that situation, because it is such a weird thing in the middle of the class for a professor to just suddenly call out and like point at me and compare my hair to like a fabric texture that is like, especially that specific fabric texture, which is just, it's like a very like, it is racist. And it just feels like there's just a lack of general understanding and empathy when it comes to certain students, and it does really hurt, I think. And I do think like a lot of stuff I have just like forgot, just because it has just been so constant and just so like, okay, well, I guess I thought college would be a little bit better about this, but clearly it's just like more of the same as like high school or like elementary. And it just like, you know, it's just more of the same every single time.
You raise a great question about where to go if you have an issue. And I'm just interested in the students. Do you know where to go if a situation arose that made you uncomfortable? Do you know the process and how it goes on from there? And since you're still on the line, do you know, Madia, what you do? Or is that?
No, I still don't really know where to go. This is a really great roundtable because I feel like I'm friends with Lexi. So I was able to kind of like get to hear about what happened at the first one a little bit. And I was like really excited that we were doing something like this, because I do feel like a lot of the minority students on campus are like, they talk to each other. That's really what we do, because there's really no way, like I maybe can go to my program director, but I also feel very bad and very uncomfortable trying to address that a professor who is supposed to be teaching me is now someone that I have to explain everything to, right? It's like, it's very uncomfortable to be someone who has to now teach the person who's meant to be teaching me, especially about a topic that is my basic humanity and like basically like it's my hair. Like why would you even like say that basically?
Thank
John,
you.
no, go ahead, Lindsay.
I have two messages that I received of people who want me to read their stories. First person says, I'm a health science major, and one of my classes I have to take is Intro to Health Professions. In one of the classes, we discuss cultural competency in the healthcare field and understanding different cultural health beliefs. It was supposed to be a lesson for us, the students, to have a better understanding of other cultural beliefs. However, the way the information was presented was disrespectful. For example, the presenter referred to Hispanic or Latino culture health beliefs, and they mentioned that Hispanics believe that they get sick due to punishment for something. I understood where they were trying to come from, but for someone who isn't part of the culture, this may be understood. Another belief we discussed was how some people believe in holistic treatment rather than medicine or surgical procedures. When we had to discuss about these different cultural beliefs, I had a classmate saying, oh, that's so dumb. If they have the resources, then why don't they get the treatment? I thought it was ironic that the particular class we were trying to have was to have a better understanding of what these different cultural beliefs were, but the majority of the class was so close-minded. I think that this is an important concept, especially since a lot of people want to do service trips, global brigades, or etc. in other countries. I also think that it's important that maybe someone from the particular culture try to teach us about their health beliefs. And they said another point, especially in the medical field, is professors should stop teaching that Western medicine is superior to other medicine around the world, because then this would allow students to have an open mind of different medical treatments that they ultimately benefit from in their career and their future with the patients they treat. So yeah, someone just wanted to bring that up, but they can't talk about it right now. But that's what they said was going on in their classes.
I was going to go to John, because John, you didn't get a chance, came a little late, to talk about your group's experience on campus, what your group has talked about.
Yep. So, like I said, kind of representing kind of black student population. Just one thing that coming into this meeting that I figured I would share, kind of in the experience that happened more recently. First year actually reached out to me more recently and told me about a time with him and one of his peers. He's a fashion design major. One of his peers were in class, and they were chatting, talking a little bit, and then the professor asked them to quiet down, and then proceeded after that to say all that rowdy talking and unnecessary behavior might work in the streets, but it won't work in this classroom. And I feel like a lot of that happens, especially with minorities and people of color, or even professors. I'm not sure if someone said this prior to me logging on, but a lot of professors code switching to and trying to match how they feel people of color in their mind, how they think that we act, and try and feel like that they can relate to us, and kind of switching their behavior or their dialogue to match what they think we are as well. When that is both that example and that code switching professors is not acceptable as well, where it should just be, just be yourself. You don't have to make the situation uncomfortable while trying to, exert yourself into something that we know that you're both not, and something that will make us feel like you're going out of your way to kind of be this thing that's not really like a force, kind of like a forced connection, when it doesn't have to be that. And there are numerous stories, numerous experiences that could be shared that I can't speak for everyone, but that is two things I can attest to now while I'm here that I can say, at least for now.
Thank you everyone for sharing. And the council actually met to discuss some of these issues and ways to address it. So we're going to go back to John, and he's going to talk a little bit about these.
Yeah, cool. So like this was just brought up previously about students not knowing who to report incidents to, incidents of microaggressions, racism to. And as a council, we kind of discussed that, because as we sat around and thought about it, we actually didn't know, as leaders of different minority groups as well, who to go to. This can make it confusing to students, with many of them thinking that it doesn't even exist on campus. And as a council, we kind of suggested that creating a central person where students can report these incidents along advertising that this option is open to students. So kind of making that well known on campus, and not really making it private, but making it more out in the open, so that students know that when they look up or when they look around, this is who I can go to, or this is the group that I can go to, instead of having to, searching or asking around, or as we are currently confused about who to go to or where to go to. And then secondly, we will also like to discuss the diversity training that teachers receive. We talked to multiple faculty members who agreed that the training does not work in a real, classroom and outside world setting. The scenarios in the training are too outlandish instead of being relevant to what students experience in classrooms. Like, as we've been discussing in this meeting, numerous things that happen on microaggressions, et cetera. For example, maybe adding some of the stories shared today, like I said, by our students, the council would suggest providing faculty training that's more applicable to students, specifically minority students. Along with this, to ask students for their advice on new training to see if it is relatable. So a big thing that can help with that is reaching out to minority students to get their input on what they think can help for these trainings, instead of just, maybe convening with each other and trying and thinking like, oh yeah, this will work. When really, while it may not be no harm, this is something that they may think is right. While us, on the other hand, we can help improve that training and actually give real life scenarios that can help within the classroom, and not just things that, the people that make these trainings think is positive or correct, when really it's a whole nother thing that can be addressed with the help of minority and people of color students.
So we want to move on to our second topic, and it's about inclusivity. So as Tabs mentioned earlier today, the school has a lot of diverse resources, but we're not very inclusive with what's going on campus. So for example, I can speak for LASSO. We recently had a salsa night on campus, and we had to collaborate with another organization on campus because we don't receive funding, therefore we can't pay for anything. And while we were working with that other organization, the purpose of it was to be collaborative and work together. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. They ended up taking over a lot of the event. And even though we got to offer suggestions at the beginning, it seems like we were ignored at the end. Along with this, there were incidents during the event where our food, our drinks were being called by inappropriate names. Students were saying that the food was gross and disgusting and you shouldn't try it, which is completely inappropriate. You shouldn't be talking about someone's cultural food like that. So that's what happened during our salsa night. And I had students from LASSO come up to me later in the day saying that it wasn't fair that Hispanic students only have 1 month to celebrate their culture. And during that month, their event they tried to do was completely ignored, and they felt like they were being left out, because even though the school does have these events, we're not included in the events well enough, and the events are whitewashed because of it. So I want to move on to other members of the Student Identity Council who will talk about their experience, and then we'll open it up to any other students who want to talk about it. So John.
I'm sorry, can you come back to me? I do apologize.
Yeah, no problem. Ashante or Lexi?
So there's a couple of things. Okay, so one thing, like with me, like to go off of, as a Black woman, I don't know who I can go to on this campus to speak to if something happens that I feel is racially offensive towards me. But in addition to that, the counseling office, like the therapists we have, to my knowledge, we only have one Black therapist, and that's Latifa. And I was just trying to like figure out, is that something I feel as though that's something that needs to be changed, like only having access to one person of color as a therapist. that doesn't really represent or that doesn't really give a lot of us like, options to go see like someone else. Like, so for example, I've already had sessions with her and I've already like maxed out my sessions with her. So I would have no other option but to go to a white therapist, which I feel like is not fair because, if we've already discussed, we've discussed at other town hall meetings about Black students and students of color being able to have access to someone that is of that same background and being able to speak to someone like about what you're going through. Trying to do that with someone who is not from your same background is very difficult. I don't necessarily want to do that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us don't want to do that as well. So that was just one thing that I wanted to bring up. And then the other thing was also classrooms. I feel as though like Black students know when you're on this campus, as far as being in a classroom, it's either you're either the only Black person in that classroom or the max is 3. And that's a huge issue. And I feel like most of the time it's really just me. Like throughout my time here, I have been the only Black female in my class. And it's a lot. Like it feels like pressure because anytime, like if we bring up a topic that has to do with Black people or the Black community, it's automatically like all eyes on me. Like, oh, well, what does she have to say about it? We're talking about something that has to do with Black people. She automatically must have something to say about that. So it's like, I don't really know like how classrooms are set up, but like it should be set up in a way where they are actually diverse, because right now they're not. And the last thing I want to say is that I feel as though there aren't a lot of Black teachers or even teachers of color on this campus either. The only time I've ever had a Black professor on this campus was when I was taking African American studies. Outside of that, I have never had another professor of color or a Black professor. And I feel like that's also an issue as well.
Thank you, Ashante. And we're going to move on to Lexi.
Just touching on what Leslie said before in terms of being included in student-based events on campus, I feel like more work could also be done to include Asian holidays, Asian events. I know that the school, again, like Leslie was saying, like we do have events that acknowledge holidays or months, like May is Pacific Islander and Asian American Awareness Month, but I feel like more can be done for that. In addition, with how Ashante was talking about the classroom, the founder of ASA, Kim Wynn, she pushed for the Asian American Studies course here on campus, which is amazing. I admire all the work that she's done for that. However, I feel like it shouldn't have been her responsibility to recognize that we do not have that course and to put in so much work to have a course about Asian American Studies on campus. I feel like that should have been more of the school's responsibility. And I think that applies to other courses that we don't have as well. I feel like it shouldn't be up to students to recognize that and to push for it. The school should be able to see that for themselves and to put these courses out for students, in addition to having a more diverse staff. Also, in terms of acknowledging religious holidays, I think that I agree that there isn't really a lot of acknowledgement in general other than Western holidays or, like Christmas. Like there are so many other holidays throughout the entire year that I think that we can address better. A way that we can do that is just by making calendars for the staff that include more than just Western holidays. I think that'd be, a great first step, and we can further build on that.
Thank you, Lexi. Tabs?
Yeah, and I could just add more on to like the religious holidays. The month of Ramadan, it's not really a holiday, it's just a month that Muslims do intermittent fasting from about, if I were to give you a time frame, from like 5 a.m. to about like sunset, so around 8 p.m. And so this usually happens mostly during finals, and students have to kind of work their way around this. Some students even have classes during the time to break the fast. But it's kind of like a very, at the end of the day, when everyone breaks fast, everyone does it together. So they're stripped of that opportunity to not be able to do so because they're, obliged to attend these classes or, worry about these finals they have to take. So they only take about like 5 minutes to eat or drink, break their fast by drinking water or like a date or something. Whereas, they've been basically, they have been fasting the whole day. So I don't know if there could be like some way that professors can accommodate for that by giving a bit more time to these students, or to at least understand that, it might be difficult for them to be on par just as the rest of their peers are. And then I think another issue would probably be how professors sort of make generalized statements, and it might not be relatable to Muslims. If I were to give you an example of that, I think, quite recently, I guess you can say it happened to me, where we were discussing different, in a class, like in a quite technical class, we were discussing like thermal conditions. And so the professor made a statement like, oh, okay, during the summer, students wear short clothing, and during the winter, you wear layers. Whereas a lot of Muslim women wear, their overgarments all year round. So it just wasn't really relatable when I heard that, and it just didn't feel like I was being addressed and didn't feel like I was included in the conversation. It kind of made me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not a part of this conversation. Like, I'm not a part of this class right now. And I feel like it's very hard and difficult for students to feel like they're included when professors don't show this sort of effort. I guess you can say this kind of also falls around under like names being mispronounced too. Muslims tend to have like this really distinct name that originates in Arabic most of the time, and they always have meanings. Like, for example, my name does originate from Arabic, and it means smile. Just like that, a lot of Muslims have names like that as well. And some professors don't even show effort. Like, I'm not speaking about all professors here, of course. There are professors out there that take the time to do so and understand what your name means or how it's pronounced, but there are, others out there who don't. And like, I know I've had to several times just give up and be like, just call me Tabs. But I think it's important that those professors know and understand how to pronounce your name, because your name is a huge part of your identity as well. So yeah, those are just a few examples.
And then MJ, is there anything you want to add?
Sure. I know that we recently did the coming out day in earlier October, because October has a coming out day. And we were able to have an event around that. That was nice. But something that I've found is that not a lot of professors are doing like safe space training. And that would be really nice for professors to do, just because it like is helpful for a student who's part of the LGBT community. I believe that's what we had spoken about for that specifically. And then I believe we had also spoken about a counselor who is part of the LGBT community, just so we're able to speak about, like, find that common ground so it's easier to speak about things. Just because I know from experience, I know from experience, I had spoken to counselors before that were not part of the community, and it was very difficult to express how I was feeling. That is for that. And then for being more aware of students with disabilities, not pointing out when they have a mobility device would be like awesome, just because I know from experience, I use a cane or a walker at points. People just go, "Oh my God, what happened?" And I'm like, you don't need to know. You don't need to know. Like I don't want to explain myself. Even though I'm happy to, but it's just like there are some days where it's like I don't want to explain it to 80 people. I believe that is all.
Thank you. Now I'm going to open it up to anyone else who wants to talk about their experiences. I'm not seeing anyone, so we can move on to the last suggestions we had as a council on how we can better address this. So the biggest issue we all have collectively as our organizations that are based on race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexuality, is that none of us are receiving any funding from the school. So when we want to plan an event related to us, we have to either fund for ourselves and ask other organizations, usually the campus activity board or the student government association. And while this has sometimes worked, it's not always. Our clubs have run into many issues with this. Firstly, the organizations are usually led by white majority boards. So this just creates an inherently wrong problem where minority students have to go and ask white students for money to host their own cultural events. So there's also a situation where students who do not understand our culture's race and identities are leading these events based on knowledge they do not have, meaning a lot of our cultural events are being whitewashed and not celebrated correctly. So we as a council suggest that for Jefferson to make this a better campus for minority students, to allocate funds for our organizations to have events led by us that fully represent us. And then the last suggestion, like Ashante said, there's only one Black woman counselor working in the Student Counseling Center. So for students who have issues on race, ethnicity, identity, or religion, it's really difficult to have someone who understands our issues themselves. So we recommend more faculty members on campus who can relate to us and hiring those diverse faculty to meet our diverse needs. I'm going to move on to Lexi, who will have an ending statement for us as a council.
We really appreciate both Chancellor McKEther for being here today and Professor Lane for helping us put this together, as well as all the faculty, staff, and students who have attended today. We hope we have offered you good suggestions on how to better improve campus life for minority students and that these conversations can continue outside of this roundtable. Are there any questions we can address for you right now? Thank you everyone who came today. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. We really appreciate it.
Just before you go, real quick, if I just make a very quick comment, if I may, and let me just say to the students, thank you. Thank you for this very courageous and appropriate dialogue. I heard you. I know that Vice President Martinez was on, or if not, members of her team were on, and they heard you as well. Some of this is surprising. Some of it makes me sad, to be honest with you. And we need to do better. And so I commit to you that I'll be working with all of my colleagues throughout East Falls campus, wherever else, because here's the reality. Future college-going students are going to be increasingly diverse. And this institution is going to look more and more like many of the people on this screen. And this institution, if it's going to survive, and I believe that it will, it has to make some changes. And I say that confidently, but of course, I don't have a blank check, but I think all of this is not about money. I mean, some of the things that much of what you've talked about does not require money. It's about a change in culture, a change in attitudes, and changing the ways in which we do business. So I'll just say thank you much. And honestly, I don't know what the follow-up to this is, but I do hope that there will be a follow-up. And just know I'm accessible with however you all want me to engage with you. I'll be with you side by side, shoulder to shoulder, as we begin to address these issues. So thank you.
Dr. McKEther, is it okay if I just say a word or two?
Absolutely.
So listen, everybody, I'm the guy that nobody knows. I know some of the faculty here, but you don't know who I am. So I'm the stranger to your group. I really do appreciate that you've allowed me into this, that you've shared your thoughts and feelings. So I'm Dr. Bernie Lopez. I am the Associate Provost for Diversity and Inclusion for TJU. I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Diversity and Community Engagement in the Sidney Kimmel Medical College. I'm a longtime Jefferson person. I'm an emergency medicine physician at Center City. I've been at Jefferson now for over 39 years, started medical school there in 1982. That's when I started. I work with Lisette Martinez. So Lisette Martinez is Executive Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer for Thomas Jefferson University and Jefferson Health. She really wishes she could have been here today because one of the things that she really likes doing is listening to people, stories, experiences of the students, faculty, staff, patients that we care for. So she uses that really to help guide the direction of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the organization. I'm the academic representative. We have an academic person, which is me. We have a clinical person, but what I just wanted to leave you with is we care about this. Your experiences, I've heard these before. I'm largely on Center City, but your experiences, they are unique. And at the same time, unfortunately, you could find the similar experiences on Center City campus. And just know, we could go hours talking about the efforts that we are making to really end up addressing all of the things that you've experienced. Our goal is to have the most inclusive environment in all parts of our organization. And that means that we are not only accepting of, but we actually cherish each one of your identities. So what I would say is just know that there are people who hold your experiences in high regard. We want this to be the best place for you, for your educational experiences, your life experiences. I've heard your stories. I've heard your experiences. We take those we use those to shape how we do the work that we do across the organization. And what I would just say is it's not over today. This is ongoing. We want to hear more. We want to work with you, and we want to make things as best as possible. So I just wanted to express that sentiment. I'm pretty confident I'm speaking for Lisette Martinez. She would have loved to have been here, and there will be other times.
Okay. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank the students who had an incredibly well-organized, very intelligently presented roundtable. I can say that after 60 of them, this is probably the best student roundtable I've sat at. Thank you so much for all of you who participated. Thank you for the administration for coming. And yes, this is only the beginning of the conversation. Everyone have a good day.
Take care, everybody.